You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
TIAA is on a mission. Why? Because 54% of Black Americans don't have enough savings to retire. So in collaboration with big-name artists like Wyclef Jean, TIAA released Paper Right, new music inspiring a new financial future. With 100% of streaming sales going to a nonprofit that teaches students how to invest. Stream Paper Right now and help close the gap.
Good afternoon, good morning, good whatever it is, wherever you are. I hope this podcast is finding you well. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I really appreciate you. I know there are so many other things you could be doing, and the fact that you are choosing to spend time with me here today, that's not lost on me. I really, really appreciate it. Today I'm talking to Exel. He's an artist from Texas, and he's been doing some really interesting things in a somewhat non-traditional manner. And I wanted to get him on to talk about his journey and how he's managed to make music his career, which is a topic I never get sick of because I used to think it was impossible for me to have a career in the music industry. And I've found a way to weasel my way into it somehow. And I'm always interested to find other folks who have also taken a different path to doing what they love for a living. So that's why he's here today. He's a great dude. We have some great conversations. I think you're really going to enjoy this. I just have one small thing before we dive right in. Basically, I want to remind you about the text chat. You can text me at 503-751-8577, and that is also in the show notes. And it comes right to me. It comes right to an application that I open up and I see who's texting. And I spend a good chunk of every day going through all those and replying to everybody and interacting. I really, really like that part. It's especially helpful for those who don't really use social media and they want to interact with the show and give feedback and request guests and nerd out about pedals or send memes or anything, really. It's really a great way to stay in touch. And once in a while, I'll send out a mass text to everybody about, sometimes it's a survey, sometimes it's a new piece of content that is, not exactly the podcast or just a question. There's all kinds of things. Anything you might want to text your buddy about, you can do it right there. And you can opt out at any time by simply replying stop. So yeah, and that again goes right to me. It's all me. No one else is involved. And I spend a ton of time interacting with folks over there. So if you want to get involved in that, it's in the show notes. Okay, enough jibber jabber. Let's get into more jibber jabber. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, a show about guitar stuff occasionally, sometimes. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have my dude, Exel. What's going on, my man? How are you doing?
My dude, I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I accidentally got on here an hour before we were supposed to do this, and I realized, wait a minute, I'm an hour early. So I went and slammed. I just went in the house and was like, I got time. I'm slamming in a session of weights before I can jump into this because I didn't think I was going to get that done today. So it actually worked out in my favor to be a little early. So,
ooh, that's dope. After this, I'm actually planning to go to the gym myself, man. So I'm on that Texas time, so I got you a little bit messed up.
Yeah, I still have never been to Texas. It feels weird to say that because there's so much music and so many things I like about Texas, and I've never been.
Let me tell you, man, the community in Texas is just amazing. Like, it's amazing. Meeting the right kind of musicians in Texas, like, super talented anywhere you go. It's a lot like, it's a more laid back California, in my opinion. Like, in terms of musicality, and everybody's kind of doing music their own way, and everyone's super supportive here, man. I love Texas. Texas is great.
That's cool, man. How long have you been there?
I've been here for a couple years now.
Mm-hmm. Where were you originally from?
So originally from NEPA, Northeast Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Huge music scene in that area. I'm sure you know. Like, they had a boom with alternative. You know, they had bands like Break and Bend came out. I think that was one of the biggest ones. Motionless in White came out. And then course, more of your underground but still mainstream bands. We had Title Fight come out of there. Bands like that in the alternative, the post-grunge, post-hardcore scene. There's so many, and there's still so many bands that are super talented in that area. So they always get my love and respect for sure.
Very nice. Very nice. So yeah, like I'm trying to reach back into my memory banks, and I, for the life of me, like can't even really remember how we got connected in the first place. But then so somehow we got connected. I know it was on Facebook, which just seems unusual these days for anybody to actually connect on Facebook. But like,
unless you're like 65.
Yeah, exactly. Or a member of the Tone Mob Facebook group. There's a little plug. Yeah, it seems kind of unusual, but I'm pretty sure that's where I first started seeing your posts. And like, obviously you play guitar, and then it was kind of evolving into more of a producer realm, including doing your own solo stuff. But then some of the people you started working with, I was like, this guy's really out here doing something that I think needs some light shed on it. And that's why I wanted to get you on the show. Obviously, we can talk guitars and whatever, but I more wanted to just dig into, like, you seem to be going at this from a different angle than what I think maybe the people especially in the rock and roll, punk rock area that I come from, tend to approach the idea of making a career in music. And I really wanted to get you on to talk about that, because it's you're taking it a different path, and I think it's really cool. But maybe the best place to start is, like, where did you start? When did you pick up whatever your first instrument was? And then we can kind of get to today.
Wow, that's always such a beautiful question, because I always want to help out independent artists, because it seems like there's a lot of noise in the music scene. There's a lot of noise of like how to do something, how to be this, how to be this. You should write songs like this. You should write songs like that. The best thing I learned before we get into my background is there's no rhyme or reason. Everybody's story is going to start and end differently. There's literally no copy paste formula to do anything. It just happens. It just happens. As long as you stay on a path and you have that goal in mind and you will not be shaken from that goal, I guarantee you something will happen. But I can't tell you how, because that's going to be up to you and the universe or whatever you believe in, right? On how that's going to happen. So I really appreciate being here so I can talk to the independent artists to hopefully give them some kind of inspiration as well. So my background really starts, I would say, wow, if I go all the way back getting into music, my dad owned a bar and restaurant, and he would always have karaoke nights. And of course, there was a jukebox, all that kind of stuff. And a lot of different people came in with a lot of different music taste. So my first memories of music would be something like Johnny Cash, or would be something like AC/DC, for example. Just tons of different sounds with Michael Jackson, Prince, because everyone played different stuff. And so for me, not many people in my family were actually musical. Like, my dad could play the harmonica and my dad could carry a tune. I have an uncle who could play the drums, but other than that, there was really nobody in my learnings of it, at least, right? Maybe down the line. But as far as I know, there were really just two musical people in my family other than myself. My cousin, she was a great singer, but outside of that, there really wasn't anybody at least trying to go for anything in a band sense or a musician sense to really go out and get something.
Yeah.
So with coming up on a bunch of different forms of music, I got into such things as Guitar Hero. Guitar Hero was actually my first introduction into the guitar.
Okay.
That's what made me want to pick up a guitar. And I remember the two songs that made me want to get a real guitar were Alice in Chains' Them Bones and System of a Down BYOB on Expert. And those were my two songs that made me want to pick up a guitar. And so I had asked my dad, I was like, I really want to get a guitar, I really want to get a guitar, I really want to get a guitar. And then he was like, it'd be too much noise, electric guitars, this, that, and the other. And he's like, why don't you do the piano? You could turn it down, like a keyboard. And so he got me a keyboard. And I remember, man, like, it had like the LEDs on it and everything. So you could like try to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, the LEDs. Oh, man, I can fake a good piano, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't do the piano at all. So eventually, I talked to my mom and I was like, Mom, I really want a guitar. I really want a guitar. And so she had talked to my dad, and my dad was like, oh, no, I really don't want him to get a guitar, et cetera, et cetera. And they were separated, but they still had like a talking relationship.
Yeah.
And so, man, eventually, my dad broke and he got me a guitar with a Line 6 Spider amp.
Of course. Of course. That was the thing, man.
Absolutely. And my first real guitar was actually an Ibanez 1995 Iceman.
Hey, not bad.
which really came together because System of a Down at the time were my favorite band. And so Darren always played the Iceman, and I loved that guitar, man. Unfortunately, I ended up selling it, but now it's worth a mint now, being a 95. But it was a great guitar. I couldn't play a lick on it at all. I don't know why I had such a decent guitar when I was first starting out. But yeah, that was my first guitar and everything. That was my first introduction to music. And then one story I never really shared much was I started getting into like karaoke contests. There was like a local fair. I started doing a bunch of karaoke contests. I impersonated Michael Jackson at like 14 years old. I ended up winning the contest. And so that was like my first, like, wow, maybe you got something here, kid. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And just by a little goal like that, just by achieving a little goal like that, really pushed me into music. So after that, we fast forward a few years being in and out of like little garage bands, never really getting anywhere. I had one band that started getting some movement. The band was Inner Temple, and we were like a grunge alternative band. And one night we were playing in New Jersey, and a guy came up to my bassist and drummer at the time, and he goes, "Oh man, you guys are really good. I'd love to connect with you guys." This guy ended up being the former manager of Alice in Chains and Soundgarden.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah. And so it was amazing. So, we went a little bit back and forth with this guy, but unfortunately at the end of the day, the band didn't work out, and the bassist and drummer had left just because, they want to do other things in life, which I totally understand. It ended up working.
Yeah.
Yeah, it ended up working out for everybody. So I think that's awesome. I have no hate in my heart at all. And actually, I have tons of love for those guys. They're still some of my best friends. And they check in on me once in a while to make sure everything's good. Great people. So after the band broke up, I was really sad. And so my best friend, Chris, he was like, dude, why don't you just start posting like covers on YouTube or something? And I was like, I don't even know what I would cover. And he's like, I don't know who's really hot right now. He's like, and he checks his phone to see like who's hot on the charts. And he's like, what about Post Malone? And I was like, well, I never really listened to Post before. At the time I didn't, because Post was like still relatively just getting out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I come from a rock background. Even though I grew up on hip hop, R&B as well, I've always been very more so focused on like the rock scene at the time. And so I did a cover at a friend's house. He recorded it, and I had another friend come by, and he did a video for it and everything. Posted it up on YouTube. Didn't do much traction on YouTube, so I was like, well, I'll post it up on Facebook. At the time, Facebook was popping for videos. So I posted up on Facebook in a Post Malone fans group, and it went viral in these Post Malone groups. Like, it started getting 100,000 views, 200,000 views. Then I posted another Post Malone cover, and they ended up getting like 1 million views combined. And they were actually so close to the original that it got removed. I got zucked because it was so close to the sound of it. And it was a different beat, everything like that, but it was close enough where it got flagged and removed. But that's where everything started. So, in brevity, on Instagram, I got a DM. And this guy just DMs me. He's like, hey, man, you got a really good voice, et cetera, et cetera. I'd love to work with you. So I look at this guy's page. It's verified. It's got a check mark and everything. And so I see that it's Sauce Lord Rich. And Sauce Lord Rich is somebody who's worked with Lil Wayne, 2 Chainz. He was Post Malone's one of his first producers.
Mm-hmm.
And he had seen the video that had like started getting traction and everything. And so he contacted me. And a few months later, I was down in Atlanta. We're recording. And then we just became like the best of friends. And so fast forward from that and working with Post Malone's foreign producer, we had Luka Magic, and now Luka Magic's been doing this amazing, thing, of course, which we can get into in a bit, but
Yeah.
in the NBA and everything. But that's pretty much, signed and sealed. That's how I got into music, and that's kind of how I got where I'm at right now.
That's the story that I like people to hear so much, because it can feel, and even for me, sometimes even just like trying to show a new pedal to people. Like sometimes you post things and it feels like you're just screaming into the wind, and like nothing's really happening. But, in hearing that, and then like hearing, I had a guy, a producer by the name of Big KO on the podcast a while back. I don't know if you heard that one, but his big thing was just like, you never know, the numbers don't tell the whole story, right? Like you never know who's actually listening or checking it out. And, I can speak to, some of the podcasts, while it does well and it's what pays the bills, it's far from the most popular podcast in the world. And it sometimes is like, oh man, I wish this was bigger. I wish this was doing something. And then I get a message from, well, actually, sometimes the messages just from random people are the most uplifting, because it's like getting things that are like, man, this show helped me get through this rough patch. And it's like, what? I'm just some nerd blabbering on the internet. But, if it helps people, that's even better. But the other point is, like, with music especially, you never know who's listening and what that could lead to, more importantly, because it's all about, getting in with people and, getting a good vibe together and making things happen. Speaking of System of a Down, I just had Shavo on the show too.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw that. I freaked out. I was like, oh my God. I marked out. I fangirled out.
I did too. I just had to try not to do it to his face.
Yeah.
Because similarly, like Toxicity, when that album dropped, it did not leave my Discman for like a year and a half. It was just all I listened to while doing everything. But going back, we had this connection to Morgoth Beats, who'd come on the podcast, and he's actually kind of got a similar story to you. He started in metal with his band Winds of Plague, which he still does.
Right. But,
yeah. And then he started doing a lot of hip hop and pop stuff, and now he's done songs with Travis Barker and like all these crazy people, and
Absolutely.
You never know where it could lead.
Absolutely. And you know what? I think it needs to be said. There's nothing wrong with doing everything that you love. If you love rock and you also love hip hop, you can do both.
Yeah.
You
Definitely.
can do both. And that's not saying like, because a lot of people will say things like, oh, this person's selling out or cashing in, whatever verbiage they want to use. But it's like, sometimes people just like a lot of different things, and that's okay. I see it, just for example, because it's on the topic, I see with Post. Post can do country, and then he can do rap, and then he can do rock. And he's great at all of it. He really is. A great artist. And so to see that, I really hope more musicians do that. I hope more musicians do that, because I would personally hate to bottle myself up in one category and be like, well, I got to stay here because most people like me here in this box, So I hope we see more of that with artists.
And I think that's becoming less and less of an issue over time, because it used to be like, even when as a consumer, back in the day, we were in kind of similar scenes in different places. It's like, oh, you have to listen to metal and punk and post-hardcore and whatever. If that's what you listen to, you're not allowed to listen to, NWA or something, There was like this unspoken rule. And over the years, that's gotten totally like eroded and broken down. I don't think kids these days have that viewpoint at all. It's just like, this song's cool, this song's also cool, or whatever, there's still scenes and there's still like cliques and tours that sometimes don't make sense on paper. But at the same time, everybody's having a good time. Everybody's here to just enjoy the music. I don't think getting pigeonholed is something that happens as much now. It still does, but not as much, I don't think.
Yeah, and I think that needs to happen more often with, putting out all your influences, because a lot of people wouldn't know, but when I was playing in the grunge band and everything, my first album ever, my first ever physical record was Ludacris Chicken and Beer.
Yeah.
That was the first ever physical record, was Chicken and Beer by Ludacris. And so you'll have people, because I do the pop music and stuff now more so, than rock music, even though I'd still love to feature on a lot of rock songs just because that still has my heart for sure. You know, a lot of people will be like, well, you sold out. You went from grunge to pop music to mainstream and everything. Like I said, they wouldn't know my first ever physical record was literally a rap album, Chicken and Beer by Ludacris.
Great record, too.
Great record.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely a rap legend, especially of our generation.
Oh, yeah.
So, and then I remember playing as Ludacris in Def Jam Vendetta. You
Yes.
know what I mean? So,
yes.
like, people just want to put their opinion on you of what they want to imagine you as, and that's
Mhm.
it. And that's it. You know, they don't really care to know your background, anything like that. It's just, if this is where they want you, this is where they want to keep you. But I really hope that we see more artists broadening out. And like you said, we're seeing that more often, and I think that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, another thing too that I found like really interesting is like with Post specifically, and I'm guilty of this too. Like I listened to some of his songs, was like, oh, this is cool. It's not really my jam, but it's cool.
Hmm.
And then when he did this is like totally old man of me, but like when he did the Nirvana stream over
Yeah.
lockdown, I watched the whole thing. I was like, this is so sick. And then I went back and actually listened critically to what he was doing, and I was like, oh, I'm hearing all these different things that I just was kind of writing off before, and I can see where he's coming from a lot better, and it made me like genuinely appreciate and become a fan of what he does, and some people are like, that's for kids, that's not rock and roll. I'm like, listen to it, like actually dice it down a little bit, and even at the end of the day, you don't have to love it, but I think most musicians could at least appreciate it, on that level.
For sure. And like the gatekeeping thing has always been weird to me.
Oh yeah.
With people saying, oh, like, for example, like Nirvana goes through it a lot. Like Nirvana gets bashed a lot. And it's like, what? Why? They'll be like, do you listen to grunge? Oh, I bet you like Nirvana. Or like someone wearing a Nirvana shirt. What are your top 5 songs? And it smells like Spirit's on there. Oh my God. No, not at all.
Yeah.
Like, it's so weird. Like, to me, man, like music is music no matter what form it is, no matter what it comes from. And honestly, in my opinion, this is a hot take, but all music is exactly the same. Whether Johnny Cash is talking about shooting someone down in Reno or whether 21 Savage is rapping about it, guess what? It's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. And that's a lot of things that people miss. So when they have this gatekeeper thing about like, oh, country can't be good, or rap can't be good, or rock can't be good, it's really all the same thing with a different beat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like people get so, and I'm saying this as somebody who's guilty of it. Like people get so upset and riled up about like that human's making a sound that I don't appreciate.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I don't know. Maybe your voice is annoying to some people. Like whatever, who you don't necessarily know. But that's not to say you're not allowed to have opinions or anything like that. And I've definitely voiced my share of them on the show. But I try to be more open these days than I have been in the past, just because I've had a lot of my preconceived notions shattered over the years. And I think it's good to try to have as few of those as possible when, observing anything, really.
Absolutely, especially like yourself, being a creator. I mean, I think taking little influences from everything is really magical, because we get a lot of new sounds from just taking little influences from different artists, different genres. I think that's great. That's what I love about today's music, honestly, is that anything that you can think of that you want to hear right now is literally at your fingertips. That's right there.
Mhm.
Somebody making something. Like people say, oh, rock is dead or grunge is dead. I know tons of new rock bands. I know tons of new grunge bands. Like they're coming out still every day.
Mhm.
But it's up to you to go find it. And if you want that to come back around, if that's the movement that you personally want, then go support, go find them, because they're out there and they're great.
Yeah, that's the thing is when people say, yeah, especially rock, just because that's what I'm closest to, is dead. I'm like, man, you're not looking very hard. Like,
Yeah.
I think about the effort that basically every generation, it goes a few years after me, but like pretty much anybody that's like, 30 and under has had it so much easier as far as discovery goes. We'd have to go in there and that's funny because we're of the age where the Gen X and older people forget that we remember the days of the rotary telephone. And like before the internet, the guys I used to work with at my old jobs that would say things all the time. They'd be like, "Oh yeah, you probably don't remember that pre-internet." I'm like, yeah, yes, I do remember a world without the internet. The 90s had no internet. It was like,
Yeah.
So digging through record bins, I was mostly looking at CDs at the time. That was still an experience that I had to discover new bands. I had to go to the store, rifle through bins, and hope I liked the one that I grabbed. And if not, maybe take it back and trade it in if you're lucky.
Yeah.
So now you just go like, that's an interesting thing. Click. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like this, or I don't like it. It's just so much easier to discover new music. And so I feel like if you think that genre is dead, like really dig in and search, because there's somebody out there that would appreciate your ears, and it takes you very little effort compared to, previous years, I think.
Absolutely. It's not, in my opinion, being in the industry and everything now, it's not so much what's alive and what's dead. It's what's more in the forefront. That's it. Because I don't believe any genre dies. There's still people out there, making literally 1950s, 60s jazz music. It's still there. It literally still exists in the ethos. People are still making it. It's just up to you to find it. And like you were saying about record stores, actually brought a core memory back. I remember going to like FYE, and you could scan them, and you put on the headset, and you look at clips. Oh man, that's a core memory you just unlocked.
Well, that would be something that we would do as friends. We would just be like, what do we want to do today? We're like, let's go try to find some new music at FYE or whatever store it was. I think it was mostly FYE, actually. Yeah. I'd go there and spend hours digging through bins. And like, at least we did have the scan function towards the end of that store's life. Rest in peace.
All right.
But we would burn hours, and it would just be like, that cover's interesting looking. Scan.
Absolutely.
And there's so many bands, like some of my favorite, like I heard, that's the first time I heard Shadows Fall. In that. I was like, oh, bye. Like, must have this. Like, oh man. Yeah, that's a good memory. Whew. That was fun.
Yeah,
times.
I remember going through the FYE store, and my brother my brother is about 20 years older than me, and I'm currently 28. Mm-hmm. So he was watching stuff like Beavis and Butthead after it was already off the air. He had like all the tapes and everything, right? And so growing up, I remember my brother having like these Beavis and Butthead VHSs. And I went to FYE one day, and you go over to like the adult section of like where you should or shouldn't be listening as a kid. And so I go over, I see Beavis and Butthead, like the mixtape, the Beavis and Butthead mixtape from the movie.
Mm-hmm.
That soundtrack was so good. Had like Red Hot Chili Peppers, Roller Coaster Love on it. Had Ozzy on there. And that's where I actually first heard Nirvana. Was I Hate Myself and I Want to Die. Was on that little, soundtrack for the Beavis and Butthead movie. And I just remember like seeing it and seeing the cover of Beavis and Butthead. I was like, oh, I'm familiar with those two cartoons. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's what got me into stuff was, like you said, the covers of things and just like the little scan and being like, oh, whoa, this is pretty cool. Kurt Cobain sounds pissed. I am too, as I'm 11 years old.
There's so much to be mad about right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's a question I wanted to dive into. This kind of taking a little bit of a sidestep, or actually a backstep, and going back to the origin story.
Yeah.
After you started getting into this, you in fact, you made a post the other day talking about it, how a lot of the music industry and entertainment itself is like pro wrestling. And I definitely believe that to be true, especially at the highest levels. But I have not experienced that same thing. I've gotten to know some pretty well-known people through the podcast, and some of them have become, good friends, which is crazy to think about. But, and those people have always seemed really genuine to me, and it's always been a real conversation and a real talk. But, only one of those people is currently filling stadiums, So I wondered if you could extrapolate on that a little further here.
Right. Absolutely. I think everyone's experience is going to be different because there's so many different personalities in the world. Mm-hmm. So I don't like to pigeonhole anybody. So when I say like, oh, the music industry is like professional wrestling, I don't want to say all artists because that's not true. Right. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the time what you'll have, I'm sure you've heard of like industry plants.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, it's a lot like professional wrestling in the fact that, we look at these people as, not naming anyone specific, but we look at artists and everything, and everyone's like, oh, they wrote such a good song, et cetera, et cetera. But they don't give credit, not the artist, but the people who listen to the artist. They don't give the time or credit to look into the people who actually made the song, who actually, quote, wrote the script, unquote, right?
Yeah.
And so that to me is like how it's like professional wrestling is. I think that producers, composers, or anybody that just helped to write, co-writers, et cetera, instrumentalists, should really get their own, praise as well, because they're really the ones making everything happen. At least when it comes to, like you had said, when it comes to like the top, right?
Yeah.
Tons of rock bands are still writing their own stuff. Tons of pop artists are still writing their own stuff. Tons of rappers are still writing their own stuff. But when we start looking at maybe the top 3 to 5, no one in specific, but when we start looking at the top 3 to 5, you're having people write their script, write their lyrics. And honestly, in my opinion, there's no problem with that. I don't have a problem with that. I just hope everyone gets their own credit.
Hi, I'm Vincent, and I'm here to talk about the Maris Mercury X. My dad's always going on and on about how cool Maris is. He really went off on one about the Mercury X the other day. He said something about a 4,800 hertz sample rate and 99 preset locations and 33 banks, and something along the lines of the most advanced reverb pedal ever devised by man? That's all true, but I only care about one thing. This pedal sounds sick. So make sure you check out the Mercury X and all the other fine products at maris.us, as well as fine retailers worldwide. All right, Dad, now can I have my Pocky?
How exactly do artists get their music on Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, Tidal, all these services? How in the world do you get your music there? Well, in the past, you had to use something called a record label. But these days, you can use DistroKid. DistroKid is the absolute easiest way to get your music up on streaming services. And it's the most affordable way to do so. Not only do plans start at $22.99 for the entire year, that's less than $2 a month, DistroKid also does not take a cut of your streaming revenue, unlike some other services out there. Even better if you sign up by going to tonemob.com/distrokid. That's tonemob.com/distrokid. One more time, that's tonemob.com/distrokid. You'll get 30% off. That's right, 30% off their already extremely reasonable prices. So go to tonemob.com/distrokid and get your music out there. Yeah, that makes some sense. I'm glad you kind of expanded on that, because I was like, I think I know what he means, but I'm not sure that I fully get it. So that does make some sense. I think, like you said, especially with the big projects, I think very few consumers understand like how many fingers are in that pot, all trying to get that same 0.003 cents per stream,
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing is, going to professional wrestling topic. So people also don't understand that a lot of artists, again, we're talking about the top, a lot of artists are playing a character. So they, so and so, this, that, and the other. Is like, it's entertainment. This is the entertainment industry. It's entertainment. A lot of the times what you're seeing is somebody playing a character. You're not seeing what we would consider to be their true self. They're playing a character. They're getting you interested. They're getting your clicks. They're getting your views. And someone's telling them like, hey, you should probably act like this. This will get a lot of clicks.
Yeah.
That's just the era that we're in.
Well, I mean, even to some degree, I've always tried to be extremely real and honest on all my platforms, but I don't tell everybody everything. I'm not going to, and some people have not criticized me in particular, but criticized just people in social media land, content creators in general for only showing the good stuff. And I'm super guilty of that. I only show the good stuff really because, fortunately, knock on wood, most of the hard things that I've had to deal with are other people's private lives that I'm involved with. And that that can't go out there. That
Right.
absolutely can't go out there. I'm not going to go be like, by the way, I had to deal with this today, when that person's like still dealing with it, you know.
Yep.
I'm very fortunate in that like most of my difficulties, you know, can be private. That said, when the whole Willamette Valley was on fire, I was certainly posting about it because I was like, I might have to leave my house. So I do try to be, legit, but not everything is for public consumption. And I think that criticism is fair, but also needs to be recognized that like, hey, people are allowed to have a private life. That's okay. And if they only want to share the good parts, that's what most people only want to share. So
yeah,
you know?
absolutely. Like, not everybody is going to post their losses. They're just going to post their wins, you know, and that's kind of where we're at with social media. And because, you know, people don't see the up and down. They just see the one line trajectory of everything.
Yes.
You know, so one of my favorite quotes going back to Alice in Chains was by Jerry Cantrell. And he said, it takes years to become an overnight success.
Absolutely.
And when I heard that quote, my brain exploded. Like, this makes so much sense coming from someone in the industry and at the time myself trying to get in, you know? And it makes so much sense because if I posted every loss I'd ever have, it would literally be my whole feed. My whole feed would be you know?
Exactly.
And that's what it is, you know? So I think a lot of people, when you start getting trolls or judgmental people, it's because they're just seeing the one line trajectory. They think, oh, they lucky, you know, or oh, they did this, or oh, they knew this person, so that's how. They don't see all the losses. They don't see every time you got second or third place. You know what I mean? They see when you got first place. They don't see the hours you put into it. For me, you know, one of my biggest hobbies that I love to do that I've always loved was bodybuilding. So when you see a bodybuilder on stage, you only see that hour. You don't see the hours and hours in the gym and the suffering with cutting calories. And you know what I mean? You don't see that part. And that's for anything, any athlete, anything like that. Of course, basketball, I'm a huge basketball fan. So same thing. You don't see the behind the scenes. You only see the trajectory of first place, and that's it. So I understand what you're saying, you know, and I agree too. I don't always post my losses, but I always am inspired when people post their losses because I'm like, wow, you know, they're really willing to do that. And I think that's great. It's definitely more outside my comfort zone, but I always look up to those people because it's like, wow, you know, that's a big set of balls for sure.
Yeah. Well, funny enough that you mentioned the bodybuilder thing, because like, while I don't look like it, like that's where I take the hard times. I internalize them, and that's where I release them, is when I'm working out. It's like, it's hard to be stressed about anything other than the 400 pounds on your back when you got 400 pounds on your back. You know, you can't really think about much else.
Absolutely. And my best ideas, I know a lot of people get their best ideas in the showers. My best ideas come from when I'm lifting weights.
Oh, all the time.
All the time. And that dopamine rush, like all of my best ideas. And I'm insane with like, you know, marketing and stuff. I'm literally between sets. I'll be on the phone, on LinkedIn, connecting with this person, talking to like ESPN. Hey, can we get this song featured? Blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm always on the go 24/7, but I always feel best in the gym, just like you said. I always feel great every time.
Yep. This entire podcast and this weird thing that I'm doing now all came from after a weightlifting session. I was headed into the sauna, and I was just like, you know, there aren't any podcasts doing this currently that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
Maybe I should try to do that. And now we're here. This was, you never, and again, that was like 2015. That was a long time ago. It takes it, and I feel in a lot of ways like I'm just getting started still.
But look at all you've built. But look at all you've built just by looking like at Instagram. You know what I mean? Look at all you've built. You know, you have to always put that into perspective. That I don't think anybody's ever finished, right? I don't think anyone ever feels like they're finished. But where you are, no matter what aspect of life, where you are is where thousands want to be. So I think always telling yourself that and always keeping a keen eye on that is very important into success.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, I something that really helps me remember that is when I have to do things that I used to have to do all the time that I don't like
Yeah.
doing. For instance, re-roofing my house recently. I helped them tear off. I was like, I don't know how to roof a house, but I know how to tear things off. I'm not just going to
Yeah.
stand here while you guys do this, you know? So I was
Yeah.
doing it and I was like, you used to do this for a living. This wasn't that fun, was it?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it was a
Yeah.
good reminder. Like sometimes, we all have hard days. We have struggles. We get like, oh man, that was a long day. That didn't go quite as well as I'd wanted. And up there doing that, I was like, remember when you did this every day? All of the
Mhm.
problems that you have to deal with from a business perspective now they're fine.
Yeah.
It's very manageable. So like, you're right. I always have to remind myself that like, even just a couple of years ago, me would be like shocked that I get to do this. And it's only because big shout out to the listeners that are hearing this right now. That's the only reason. So thanks for your time, everyone. I really appreciate it. It's
Absolutely.
life changing, quite literally.
Absolutely. I was listening to an Arnold Schwarzenegger speech yesterday, and he had said at one of his speeches, he would work out for like 5 hours a day. And this actually is really good for musicians, those who are listening. So he would work out like 5 hours a day. And, people would say, Arnold, you're in the gym and all you do is smile. Why are you smiling? And he said, how can I be angry?
Right.
I'm doing what I love. How can I be angry? He's like, if I never made it in bodybuilding, I'd be yodeling somewhere
Right.
in Austin, you know? And so I think that's a big takeaway. Like you said, where you are now is not where you were, and where you are now is also not where you're going to be.
Mhm.
So keeping that momentum going is amazing. And to be out of the 9 to 5 is an amazing feeling. Yeah, some days are still hard. Don't get me wrong. Some days are still hard. Like sometimes you got a song, you're like, oh man, I got to finish this. Or, you're booked with a bunch of things. You're booked with interviews. You're booked with this. You're booked with that. And time management, if you're not great at it, then sometimes like, but I would much rather, much rather go through that every single day.
Yes.
Much rather, than working 9 to 5. I've never been a good 9 to 5 worker. Blake, I'll be honest with you. I've never been a good 9 to 5 worker. I never was a good 9 to 5 worker.
Mhm.
And I think it's okay. I think that's okay for people to admit. Not everybody's cut out for it. 9 to 5 is tough. It's tough, And so I really think if anyone's going to do anything, you might as well see what you can get away with and just try. Just try to do what you love and see if it works out. I'd personally rather be 80 years old in a rocking chair and have failed, but then like, you know what? I tried,
Instead of what if? Yeah.
Yeah. Than to be 80 years old and have maybe 3 years left and not knowing what comes after any of this and be like, damn, it really should have. So, but I think we're doing that. I think we're doing that as a society. I think we're waking up to that. I see a lot more people doing what they love. I see a lot more people getting out of the 9 to 5, and really building their own brands, their own companies, whatever it might be. I can never knock someone making $20 million a month on OnlyFans. You kidding me?
Right.
Hell yeah.
Must be nice,
Hell
right? Yeah.
Do it. Do it.
Yep.
And so that's where I come from. I come from that state of, you might as well try. You might as well try and get it figured out. If you fail, then you have a decision to either try something else you love or go back to the 9 to 5. And that's it. And that's it.
And that's the other thing. I want to be careful when I'm talking about this stuff too, because I think of my dad in this scenario, and I've brought this up a lot on the show, and he is cut out for the 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Like he ran his own business. He ran it for 12 or 13 years and did not like it. He's like, I don't like doing this. I don't like running a business. I just like to be able to go into work, do my job well, leave and not worry about it till tomorrow. Whereas, whether you're a small business owner, a musician, an artist of any kind, whether we want to admit it or not, you're running a business at the end of the day, and
Absolutely.
You're always thinking about it. There is no real time off from it.
Absolutely.
Not really. except maybe when you're working out or in an isolation tank or something. That's even in an
Yeah.
ISO tank though. I'm
Yeah.
still thinking about it. Like,
Yeah.
like, so, and I'm more comfortable with that. There's a quote that gets thrown around all the time where it says like an entrepreneur is somebody who works 80 hours a week so they don't have to work a 40. And that is 100% me. 100% me.
Yes.
It's not my dad though. And it's not a lot of people. And I
Right.
think when we get into conversations like this, people who are wired like you and I tend to get pretty excited about it because we're so excited that we get to do this all the time.
Yeah.
But we got to remember to acknowledge the people who are like, I don't want to do that. I want to just work my job and do my thing. That's all I want to do. And that's perfectly okay too.
Absolutely. I don't think a fish should be, I don't think a fish should be blamed for its ability to climb a tree, right? So
Right.
if someone's good at a 9 to 5, they're already better at something than me. I'm not good at 5. So I would never pass judgment on anybody working a 9 to 5 because it is hard. It's something I can't do. It's something I was never good at. So seeing people who are good at it, I think they deserve praise as well because it is tough. It is very tough. So
all of our systems are built upon those people. All of them.
Absolutely. The world works for those warriors because they are warriors to get up every day and to just go with the flow and to be okay with everything that's, dished out at them for better or worse. Something I could never do, honestly.
Yeah.
And so I think they deserve a lot more praise because I hate when entrepreneurs go after that. I hate when, they start bashing like 9 to 5 workers. Like, that's their choice. If they want to do that, then that's totally fine. And I think it's awesome.
Also, like entrepreneurs, artists, etc., everything we're talking about would not exist. We would not be able to do it without everyone doing what they do. It's just that's just a fact. If there was nobody to buy tickets to the concert, those performers wouldn't have any way to make a living. 99% of the people who attend those have regular jobs, and that's what they like to do. So
that's their escape.
Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes, like you said, they deserve more credit, and we got to acknowledge that in these conversations too. And I don't think it's anybody trying to do it maliciously or bash anybody or anything like that. It's just because we are wired the way we are, we get so tied up in all our own nonsense and thoughts, and we got to remember not everyone thinks like that. Not everyone was wired that way.
Absolutely.
So, segueing away from this a little bit, you've mentioned some other things in other posts of suggestions for insert type of artist here, whatever it happens to be, that are a little different than I think what is normally pushed by, if you want to call it the mainstream, Rolling Stone type media. You've taken a different path altogether. Yes, you've gotten with producers and things, but you've talked about submitting things to music libraries and things like that. Can you go a little bit further into that?
Absolutely. And this actually piggybacks on what you were saying about when you're an artist, you own your own business. And I don't think the material is out there enough for artists, right? I don't think a lot of people talk about these things, which is no fault on the artist. No fault on the artist. It's actually a fault on the industry. But the industry, a lot of the times, not always, because there's really good record labels out there. There are really good record labels. But I think the industry kind of wants to not really show all the info to the artist, like not show the whole magic trick, right? So for an artist to make money, in my own opinion, I think it's best for an artist to make connections on such sites like LinkedIn. If you're not familiar, LinkedIn is more of your professional Facebook, is what I would say.
Yeah.
So you can connect with people who are A&R at Republic Records, or you can connect with people who run the music for Lionsgate, the music supervisor for Lionsgate Films. You can find those people. If you truly believe in your music and you're of the mindset of, well, I only have X amount of listeners a month on Spotify, and I'm only making X amount of dollars on Spotify, and I really can't live off that, but I do believe in my music. I really think that finding music supervisors on LinkedIn and pitching them your music is honestly where you're going to get your money. That's where you're going to get your money. When you get placements in film, when you get your placements in TV, when you get placements with bigger artists, for example, because I just did some guitar work for B.O.B., when you get your stuff with bigger firms and bigger corporations, that's where your income is really going to come from. Placement has the highest rate of income rather than streaming. And I don't think there's a problem with streaming. I'm of the mindset of, hey, I think it's a tool, right? But you should use every tool in the toolbox. So I do believe artists should get a hold of music supervisors, get with a music supervisor you like, you trust, that's had a good track record of getting placements in shows, and send your music along and see if you get placed. That's where I feel that we are in music right now, because look at all the songs that are big right now. Running Up the Hill, or Running Up That Hill, right? Kate Bush, Metallica, Back on Top, So the bands, the artists that are big right now, they're big again because of placement. It's not streaming, it's placement. Stranger Things, Euphoria. My producer just had a placement in Euphoria with B.O.B. So like having the placements is what matters a lot more, in my opinion, than anything else. So I think artists should really go after that.
We are brought to you today by Sweetwater, specifically the Gear Exchange. You may have heard about this. This is a place where you can go to buy and sell your used gear. Maybe you got a pedal over there that's just kind of collecting dust. Maybe there's something you've been eyeing from the Sweetwater catalog. Well, right now is a great time to turn that unused gear into something you're actually going to use. Even better, if you sell on the Gear Exchange, you can keep 100% of the sale as long as you choose a Sweetwater gift card as your payout method. That is not too shabby, because let's be honest, most of this buying and selling we do is just to fund new gear purchases, and that is a great way to reach a wide variety of customers and keep 100% in your pocket, or rather on your pedal board. So go check out the Sweetwater Gear Exchange and turn that unused gear into something that's actually going to help you write that next huge riff.
Hello there. I'd like to introduce you to your new best friend, the Chase Bliss Audio Lossy. Lossy is a collaboration between Chase Bliss and Goodhertz. And it's meant to give you some control over those weird digital artifacts that come with very compressed audio. You're hearing it right now. All the changes that are taking place are strictly coming from my playing dynamics. I'm just interacting with the pedal and letting it do its thing. In some true stereo goodness. If you'd like some more details about Lossy, I'd invite you to head over to chaseblinssaudio.com. I think you're going to like what you find.
Yeah, and admittedly, some of that was really selfish, because ever since I put out the American Cyclops record, the number one thing I get is, like, hey, you should be doing movies. You should be doing soundtracks for movies. And I was like, that's like one of the main things I want to do, but
and
I'm so disconnected from it.
No, your work is literally perfect. Your work is so perfect for like video games and like film. Like every time I hear your stuff, I was like, yo, this could be huge. Like every
Thank you so much, man. That I appreciate that. But I'm like, okay, I'm just barely starting to dip my toe into that world, just like peeling back the curtains. There's a library that I have gotten approval to work with now, and I'm like, okay, I'm a little leery, because like I'm like, oh boy, I've done everything myself this whole time. But at the same time, I'm like, this seems like if you want to get into it, much like the music world, the only way I was able to get into it is just start sending messages, just start sending emails, and then
Absolutely.
That's what happens,
Yeah, and that's what puts people ahead. I don't believe that anyone's better than anybody. That's my own opinion. I don't believe that. I just think there are some people who find different avenues to success. For example, you just brought up emails. Man, to get this song that I have with the NBA, with the Dallas Mavericks, this took hundreds of emails. It's not like the song just came out And like Mark Cuban was like, hey man, do you want $100,000? Like,
Right.
that didn't happen. It was literally, my producer and I, we had made the song. I'm a big fan of the Dallas Mavs, Luka Doncic. The song came out and I started sending emails because I knew the Mavericks had to hear it. I just wanted someone to hear it. I didn't
Yeah.
think it would, just start its own culture, And so one person, Tamra, she actually put out the article on the song, and from there it just went crazy. But before she heard the song, before anything like that, before it went crazy, it was hundreds of emails to everybody, whether it was the popcorn person or whether it was Mark Cuban or whether it was a writer. Everybody got an email, and I was like, I just want the Mavericks to hear this. So I told them my story, my background, where I come from, why the song was created, and why I feel they should take a listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what it takes, though. That's what it takes is, like you said, just the emails, the connecting with people, being a real person and not just putting your music out there and being like, well, new song, listen,
Right.
what's drawing me to that? What's drawing me to that? Of course, if you've been following, like, for example, System of a Down, then that's going to work just because their fan base is already built. That's already there. They are legendary, Hall of Fame worthy, right? So you can do that. But when you're starting out, when you're an independent artist, you have to give someone a reason to listen to it. And for me, being a Dallas Mavericks fan, being a Luka Doncic fan, this song came out and it connected me with people just like myself.
Mm-hmm.
And now the fan base that has been built from that song are people like me. They're my friends, because I can go on Twitter and we can talk about basketball. And they're always screenshotting, oh, I'm listening to this song right now. And then it just keeps the wheel moving. So for independent artists, I really think connecting with people, talking about things you like in your music is a huge key because that'll connect you to people who are lifelong fans that love what you do and will always love what you do because you are them and they are you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and I can back that up in a somewhat different way. Like if I look at my demographics breakdown on who's consuming my content, it's me. it's people just like me because,
Absolutely.
as much as we say opposites attract, I don't necessarily think that's 100% true all the time. I think
Right.
we tend to gravitate to people who we understand, a little bit more. And yeah, so it's not at all shocking. I'm like, okay, who's a brick? And it's like guitar players from 25 to, 40. Like, yeah, okay. Yeah, it sounds about right.
Yeah.
that
And I
pencils.
think, and that's so important is to know your demographic because human nature, we can smell dishonesty. We can smell dishonesty. We can hear dishonesty in music. You'll have a band release a track and it'll just get panned. It might sound great. On wax, it sounds great. But people are like, oh, this sounds totally dishonest or this sounds like this. People can sense it. People can sense it when you're trying to pander to a demographic that you don't actually enjoy that musicality of, right? So if you are a rocker and you've never liked shoegaze, just for example, like that was never your genre was shoegaze, and you make a shoegaze record, I guarantee it's not going to go wild on the charts because it might sound great, but people can sense the dishonesty. They can sense it. So that's why with Luka Magic coming out and everything, it was about something I really loved, something I really enjoyed. And so people found value in that because it's something they can also relate to.
Yeah.
And that's why I believe the song's done so well.
So what are your thoughts now on songs? We've talked a lot about individual songs doing well and doing things versus, the more old school mentality that I tend to have, which is album, like going front to back, and the album itself is a one cohesive thing that's kind of meant to be consumed together. That's definitely not what is seemingly popular these days. But do you think there's any room for that?
Oh, absolutely. I'm of the mindset of music in general doesn't have any rules. There's no rules in my opinion. And I guess that's where my punk rock mentality comes from. But, I would say this. I would say that for certain bands, like for example, in my opinion, like Gojira, I think they're a great album band because it's just so cohesive. But maybe, just for example, not specifically, but maybe someone like Lil Uzi Vert isn't much of an album guy. Maybe he's more of a singles guy.
Okay.
Not a problem with either artist, right? But Gojira is just so known for their cohesiveness that they are kind of solidified to be able to put out a record, and it's going to be streamed the whole way through. Whole way through, because they're just very masterful at it. Whereas somebody in my realm, in the pop realm, we're not usually the strongest album people. We're more of the singles people. And so I think there's no real rhyme or reason. I will say, though, that right now, currently, looking at the data, it looks like singles are better than albums, just in general. But I still do feel there's room for your bands like Gojira putting out full-length 2-hour-long albums, or like Tool, putting out their 5.5-hour-long albums.
That's true.
And there's still room for it, though. There's still room for it, for sure.
So one more question on the kind of the more general music topic before we get into the final questions of the podcast. So when because now you've been through this process, I've wrote in the rock band context, and I've wrote for myself solo, and that's really it. I've done some collaborations here and there where it was like, hey, we just want another layer of guitars on this track, and I'll listen to it and just be like, okay, I'll do a different sounding guitar on this particular track. I didn't really consider that much of a right, it's just like, I'll just add some texture to this or whatever. But when you're actually looking at things to make another pop single out of, and you're listening to, you got people submitting things from your producers and people that they know and people that you got all kinds of different little clips coming in here and there. What is it that, like, is there a specific thing that you're looking for, or does it vary song to song? Or you're like, if this track does like this really cool thing on the 1 and the 3 at just the right time, we know it grabs people's attention? Or is it just like, we listen to it, we see what works, and we just go from there?
That's a great question. Coming from rock, and most of the rock that I've consumed, I'll be honest, has been mainstream. It's been Nirvana, Alice in Chains. Like, that was always me. It's been Metallica, Megadeth, and I don't feel bad about saying that. I've always consumed the more mainstream stuff. I'm a huge fan of dad rock.
Yeah.
Huge fan. So for me, though, coming from that, I always looked at the songwriting of that. So for me, when I go into a song, whether I'm producing it or whether it's my own music, I have my own set of guidelines. I love starting out with a chorus because that just grabs attention real quick. And I like having at least 3 choruses in a song because then it becomes catchy. I like to keep songs about 2 to 2.5 minutes. That's another thing that I like to do. That's also become industry standard now for those listening. That's industry standard now is about 2 to 2.5 minutes, just for replayability wise. In terms of production, it does vary song to song. But for example, a producer like mine, Sawsword Rich, he's just about 10 times platinum at this time. He knows my settings. He knows like, okay, I want to set his vocals here, dip off here at this frequency, et cetera, et cetera. So he has all that covered. And he also knows my my BPM. I love a certain BPM. That's just what I can write on in like 5 minutes. Like Luca Magic was written in like 5 minutes, because the BPM was just perfect for me. And another producer I work with, Loose Jock, same thing. Like, they just know where I sit well in my EQs and everything, that they have that covered. But for me to get into a song, it's more so like BPM. So yeah, I definitely think that I have my own formula that I enjoy.
Cool. Yeah, it's just interesting to, I know I've talked to you about it in the email. I'm like, I don't really know how this works, so I'm just going to send you a bunch of stuff and like, whatever. I don't know what you're going to do with it, like, if anything. And so I'm like, I don't know, sometimes it's hard for me because I got lots and lots of WAV files, some of which don't make a lot of sense, but maybe in a different context would. And so sometimes it's like hard to parse through when you're trying to work with different people and on when, I've spent years sketching by myself. It's kind of an interesting exercise to see what works for other people in context that I'm not even really that familiar with,
I think I speak for every guitarist. I love reverb. So once I hear reverb on a guitar, like landscapes, like that's another thing that I love is landscapey sounds. I love that. Like when I first heard what you had sent me, it just sounded so landscapey and like you can create a vision in your head. And I was like, oh, fuck, like this needs to be used somewhere. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I love that. I love when I can like see a picture. And I've also been bringing more quote unquote real instrumentation into my music just
Oh,
so
yeah.
I can start, so people see like, oh, he's not getting away from rock music. He still really likes it. Like, yeah, of course,
Mm-hmm.
but I have to show people that, because
Yeah.
they don't want to look at my old album collection, So I
Right.
have to show people that like, hey, no, I come from everything. Like I grew up on everything, man.
Mm-hmm.
So to have like little guitar sounds here and there, but then also have an 808 thud. And that's what I really
Mm-hmm.
like, meshing everything together.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then I get so weird, as you're aware. Like I make my guitar not even sound like a guitar half the time. Just
Sounds amazing.
so it's
Sounds amazing.
like, what is? Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Well, let's see. We are getting close to the end here, and I need to ask you the classic questions to wrap this thing up. But also, I like to give the guest a chance to plug anything they want to plug, shout out anybody they want to shout out. This is your kind of time to take the floor and just say whatever you want to say to a few thousand people.
Appreciate it. Well, it's been amazing. And I always look at myself as the backseat driver to anything, to any kind of success. I'm always the backseat driver. Honestly, the people who do it are the people that follow you, the people who listen to your music, the people who push it. So I have to give big thanks to Forbes, who had me in. I have to give a big thanks to Fox, who had me in, NBC, Dallas Mavericks, all the amazing fans of the Dallas Mavericks, of this song, Luka Magic. I have to give a big thanks to my producer, Sauceword Rich. Big thanks to B.O.B. And just a big thanks to anyone really following this journey, because it really has been a journey that I'm so thankful to have been a part of, for sure. And if people would like to look more into this, you can follow my Instagram, and you can follow my Twitter as well. My Twitter is Exel Tweets, and my Instagram is Exel Wolf, EXELWLF. And I'd love for people to jump on board. I'm always here to help artists as well. So if any artist is listening and they want my help, I'll do anything I can to give what I feel is good advice in my own opinion, because my opinion can always be put up against the wall and be trash.
That's right.
I'll always do my best to give what I feel can help somebody out, because I just want to see people succeed. I think that's the biggest takeaway. I just want to see people succeed. Like I said earlier, I always just wanted to see what I can get away with, And so when it was the NBA, and then that song was played in front of 20,000 people, and then it was like, well, can I get this bigger? And then it was Forbes, and then it was Fox, and it's like, you can really do anything. Like what I was taught in kindergarten is so true. you can really do it all,
That's right.
So if anyone needs my help or guidance in any means, if they need a couch therapist, I'm here for that as well. So whatever I can do to help people out.
That's great, man. So yeah, all the links for that will be, of course, in the show notes, everybody. So you don't got to swerve off the road to, try to rewind this and type that into your Instagram. It'll be in the show notes. Stay safe. It's all good. But thank you for that. That was great. And now we're going to dive into the classic questions. Here we go. First one is, what is your favorite Boss pedal?
Oh, wow. I have to tell you, my favorite Boss pedal is their chorus pedal. I love the chorus pedal. I believe it was the CH2.
Yeah, the CE2. CE2.
CE2.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love that pedal. I really do.
Yeah.
I loved it. There was so much I could finagle with it and everything. I remember I got rid of it to trade what I thought was trading up for the small clone.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I much preferred the Boss pedal, to be honest with you.
Well, CE2 is a wonderful pedal.
Yes,
that's a very common answer. Is the CE2?
Really?
There's actually, yeah. I'm gonna.
I was doing something with that answer.
It's such a classic sound. You know what I mean? It's like it's the '80s in a good way. It sounds so good. It's such a good circuit. But there's a listener that's actually going back through every episode. I think I started asking that question around episode like 150.
Yeah.
And they're going back through every episode and putting into a spreadsheet the guest and what their answer to that question is. So yeah. I'm going to be really, really curious to see what the most popular answer is, because everyone's, I feel like, said everything at this point, and I get it all mixed up in my head. I can't remember who said what, when, where, how, and so it's going to be a fun experiment when they get done with it to see what the statistics look like, because I don't think a survey like this has ever been done at such scales.
Yeah,
so we'll find out.
The thing about Boss is I never had a pedal with Boss like I was willing to spend like a lot of money on. The only brand I was like, oh, I got to get that one was Electro Harmonics.
Yeah.
Actually wanted to buy the first run of the Op Amp Big Muff when it first came out.
Yeah.
So fortunately didn't grab it because I thought it'd always be around. It was on Reverb. It wasn't always around. It got sold like right after. I was like, I'll get it next week. So I had to go online. I got a reproduction. I don't know if many are familiar, but the brand is called Made by Mike pedals.
Oh, I've never heard of those.
Okay. So he makes a Siamese Dream pedal. It's called the Dreambox. And so what it is it's an Op Amp Big Muff on one side. And on the other side, the booster is an MXR Distortion Plus. And combined, my amp set up in stereo, it literally sounded like Siamese Dream. Like it was so like poofy. You know what I mean? Just like cloudy, just incredible. And then I ran a Keeley delay set to like 30 milliseconds or something like that. So it sounded like dual guitars. Best sound I've ever had in my life was on stage, was at that point. That was my peak.
Man, I forget how much I like the Op Amp sound. The Op Amp Big Muff is such a cool circuit. And I think still even now, a lot of people don't realize that it does indeed sound different than every other version of the Big Muff out there, because it's actually a completely different circuit. It's not the same at all. Sonically, it's in the same wheelhouse, but it's completely different circuit and has a different feel. The Op Amp Big Muff is just so good.
Yeah, and at the time, at least a few years ago in the grunge scene, everyone was playing more of your like Green Russian Big Muff. For that grunge sound. And to my knowledge, the people I was playing around, I was the only one with the Op Amp. You never heard Siamese Dream? Like, this is the I've always loved that like Velcro sound. I love that Velcro sound that it had.
Yeah, definitely. All right, man. Final question, and we'll wrap this up and we'll get weird on the Patreon section. So this is the one that gets a little dicey sometimes. This is the one that tears families apart, but I think we got to go for it. What is your favorite kind of pizza?
Oh, man. You know what? No. I was actually just afraid of getting canceled for this. I'm going to say it's the pineapple and bacon.
He's going there. Podcast is over.
What it is. That is.
You love it. You love the pineapple.
I never understood how people can like knock sweet and savory. Like, that's just human taste bud. This is how it works. So like when people back, like you're lying so bad.
I can't do it. And it's not that I don't like sweet and salty, because I do. I love it. And in fact, I just confirmed this the other day. I do this to myself, and I think a lot of people should do this too. I try things periodically that I know I don't like, because I have developed taste for things over time. When I was a kid, I hated onions. Hated them. I absolutely love onions now. I don't know how I could have ever hated them. There's a handful of things like that. Sauerkraut. I used to hate sauerkraut. Now I like sauerkraut on my dogs. So it's like same things over time that I've tasted and I've grown. And I will routinely go back to pineapple, just pineapple by itself. I don't like pineapple by itself. And as of last week, I can confirm I still do not like pineapple by itself. I can eat it. I'm not going to throw it. I'm not going to spit it out. But I'm like, no, I just don't like pineapple for some reason. I don't know what it is.
Hey, man, I think there was an episode of Doug. Didn't Doug dip bananas in like pizza sauce?
Yeah, something like that. That sounds rough. But hey,
that's where I would draw the line. When someone's, let's put bananas on the John, I'd be like, no, I'm out.
No, we can't do that. I've got to go. I'll see you later.
Too much potassium. Sorry.
Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on. This is a blast, and I'm excited to see what we get into on the bonus episode here.
Absolutely.
Dude. All right, everybody. For Exel, this is Blake, and as always, folks, good luck and good tones. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. Exel and I had a great talk. I think you'll agree. You just got done listening to it. But I have to say, yet again, Patreon is even better. And I'm not just saying that to get people to sign up, although it does keep food on the table. It really is just, you spend an hour talking to somebody, and then you've broken the ice at that point. And, that tends to lead to stranger and more interesting conversations on part 2. I'm just saying. And if you'd like to get that, you can go to patreon.com/tonemob. And for $5 a month, you will get extra episodes beamed directly to your ears every single week. And I appreciate everybody who does that. And I understand if you can't. I totally get it. It's a weird world out there right now. But if you could force a loved one to listen to this, that would be great. Just tell them you're going on a road trip and you've put on a perfect soundtrack and then just do nothing but play this podcast and get them hopelessly addicted to it so they download all of the back episodes and just listen forever and ever. Okay, it doesn't have to be that weird. But if you could tell somebody about it, that would be massively helpful. Seriously, the only reason this thing keeps growing is because you keep doing just that. And it is a huge help. I can't tell you how important that is. It really means the world to me. So if you could share this with somebody, that would be most excellent. All right. I'll talk to you next time, and I will see you on the internet. As always, folks, bye-bye. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.
Hey, this is Mike Wiebe, and I'm the singer in a band called the Riverboat Gamblers.
And I'm Zach Blair. I play guitar in a band called Rise Against. Mike and I also have a band called the Draculas, and we also have this great, amazing new podcast called Zach and Mike Make 3.
Yeah, each week we're going to ask ourselves and we're going to ask our guests what 3 favorite things they are into at that moment or in their entire lives. And then we're either going to agree with them or we're going to make fun of them. And you're going to listen to it and you're going to like it, or we will make fun of you. How about that? I just flipped it on you, the person listening to this right now. But we're going to do it every week here on the Sound Talent Network. Once again, it's called Zach and Mike Make 3.
Yeah.
Ever wonder what a punch from Elton John feels like?
Or how you'd cope with having turned down the chance to be in Nirvana?
Or what signal Keith Richards gives when he wants you to get the hell out of his hotel room?
Fans of Too Much Effing Perspective don't have to wonder because they've heard these exact stories and a jillion others on our podcast. I'm Alex Hoffman, former tour manager for Radiohead.
And I'm musician and comedy writer Alan Keller. On the TMEP show, we get guests like Nancy Wilson from Heart, Jeremiah Freites from the Lumineers, and Modern Family's Julie Bowen to tell us things they may have only shared with their therapist, clergy, or a TMZ stringer.
So join us on Too Much Effing Perspective. That's EFFING Perspective. The only podcast you crank up to 11.